Hey guys, welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about finding big bass in early spring. All right guys, so before we jump into today's topic, I gotta thank the folks at NRS for helping make this Performance Matters series possible. Whether you're looking for gear for the lake, rivers, inshore, offshore, nearshore, or everything in between, the folks at NRS have you covered when it comes to your water sports adventures. Check out their website, check out all their socials for their extensive product selection. So let's jump into finding big bass in spring. You know, this could be one of those things where one year you're a hero and another year you're a zero. And if you're somebody like me who has a tendency to always want to experiment, you also tend to end up reinventing the wheel a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. But that's just the nature of the explorer, adventurer mindset that I have. And I think it pays me dividends in some cases. And in other cases, it might cost me opportunities to catch fish. So let me zero in the basic concept of going out there and finding big bass in the spring. You don't have to do a whole lot of crazy complicated stuff. I do think you need a quality depth finder if you want to consistently catch fish in late winter and early spring. And the reason for that is you have to find fish deep first and then follow them shallow. Now, if you've been following me for any number of years, you know I'm a big STD is catching kind of guy. I mean shallow to deep. I like to go shallow first and just keep looking for the fish because I want to be the first one to find them. I want to find those virgin fish that haven't been harassed by people flipping beds. But if you truly want to catch fish and you truly want to have the most success, what you should do is go out and check secondary points and offshore humps, find the fish there first, and you know that those big females are staging, getting ready to move in shallow. A lot of times those places are harder to fish. They have more boat traffic. I don't necessarily want to reveal those spots by anchoring on top of it. I like to find those fish that are hard to get to. I like to spend a lot of time in rivers. I like to spend a lot of time finding these backwater ponds and sloughs, and that's just my type of fishing. So I'd say the number one rule of thumb is to find the water that's going to warm up first, okay? On most reservoirs, that's going to be the northwest corner of any body of water. Sun rises in the southeast, hits that northwest corner. That northwest corner generally is going to warm up first, except for when you have northerns blow back in. Winds are going to be not out of the north, so they're going to blow the water up on that north end. The warmer water is usually on the top. Warmer water is lighter than cold water, so it sits up on the top, and any wind that's not a north wind blows it up into that corner. So that generally is a good rule of thumb for where fish are going to start to exhibit spawning behavior first. If you fish a big impoundment like Lake Hartwell that we're on right now, or Kentucky Lake or Gunnersville or some of those lakes, you can't think of the entire lake and then pick the northwest corner of the entire lake. You have to think of each arm or creek, as a lot of people refer to them, as its own body of water. So if you're fishing a creek that is part of a bigger body of water, look for those northwest corners, those pockets, those coves. Generally, the deepest, stillest water is going to warm up first. The water that doesn't have current, the water that doesn't have wind effect, in the water that gets to be still, because you're going to start having longer days. The photo period is the first thing that make bass start to move, even before the water temperature. And bass need three things. They need food, they need oxygen, and they need temperature. So they seek out food, they seek out oxygen, and they seek out a temperature that makes them comfortable. Temperature is not the number one driver like a lot of people think it is. Temperature is something that they need to be comfortable, but they will get in an uncomfortable temperature to find food and to find oxygen. Not that perfect they'll go colder or they'll go warmer than their ideal temperature at that time of year in search of food or oxygen. So I call it FOT. Just remember food, oxygen, temperature. Generally, it's in that area. Generally, it's in that order because the food or the bait fish are going to find oxygenated water. So if you find the bait, you find the fish. This week, for example, we have found a lot of bait. We have found so much bait that it's even difficult to compete with the bait to try to get bites. And, you know, you can downsize and you can throw drop shot rigs and do some of those other things. But in a lot of cases, what you need to do is find that bait and sometimes you just have to let some of that biomass of bait get eaten down by the bass before you have a better shot at catching fish. And so staying on top of that bait, knowing what the bait's doing, following that bait migration is key, is the most important thing to finding those fish. They're feeding up, getting ready to spawn. By and large, when they go into the full-blown spawning process, they're going to stop eating. They're not going to be burning calories out running around chasing bait. So they have to pack on the pounds, they have to pack on the calories before they go into the full-blown spawning ritual. And so it could be one of those times where it is pure magic or pure maddening that you can find the fish, but you can't get them to eat. And for me, what I've been doing this year in spring is a lot of looking for fish and not seeing them. If I was fishing a tournament, or if I had to catch a fish just to catch them, what I would do is if I was like, okay, this is a spawning area, I would follow the creek channel back out to the first secondary point, the first offshore hump, and I would look for brush piles, and I would look for fish holding cover in those areas. Fishing a lake like we're fishing, Lake Hartwell, where the bait is really pelagic, a lot of times you just have to look for that topwater bite. You have to follow that bait migration and wait until those fish move up shallow and kind of break off of that herring feed. On a shad, brim, or crawfish, a lake where that's the primary forage, generally you can just follow the bait, follow the shallow water migration of those bait up into that shallow water. The bigger fish are going to follow them. They're going to set up in predictable areas, and those predictable areas are going to be your offshore humps, your secondary points, and in a lot of cases, a big female is not going to be a mile and a half away on the biggest point. She's not going to be a half a mile away on an offshore hump. If you find males starting to make a bed and the females haven't moved in yet, they're probably less than 100 yards away in a creek ditch, in a depression, in a saddle, something that's a little bit deeper water, something that's a little more protected, but it doesn't have to be a 20-foot drop off. It doesn't have to be a 300-yard long point with a 15-foot drop on both sides, and it doesn't have to be a secondary point with a 10-foot drop. It can literally be a creek channel swing, a bend, or just a hard edge on a flat that's out just far enough that she's protected from avian predators. Her temperature's a little more regulated. And again, she's getting ready to move in. She doesn't want to have to swim a mile or even a half a mile in a lot of cases. And they definitely don't want to be setting up in current where they're burning calories just to hold body position or just to hold position. So the number one rule of thumb, if you want to find fish in spring, is find the food, find the oxygen, and find that perfect temperature. Now that perfect temperature for me, about 50 to 55 degrees is when I really start getting excited, because those fish are pre-spawn, they're feeding up. That 55 to 59 window that we're in right now is the part where it gets tough. It's that transition period where they're not really 100% mauling bait and going crazy. And then once that water temperature hits 60, things can get magic. They're going to make one last hard feed. About 62, they're going to move in shallow and start the spawning process. And between 62 and 68, it's usually done. And by the time that water temperature is 70 degrees, by and large, especially for largemouth, it's over. Smallmouth's a little bit colder than that, maybe 2 degrees on every one of those scales. But knowing those little things will help you make the right decisions to find fish. I personally like to swing for the fences. I personally like to only fish for the big fish. I try to steer clear of catching bucks. I don't want to disrupt the process of them making the bed, making the nest. But I do want to disrupt a big old female's face by hooking her in the cheek and watching her shake her head and then let her go, and she'll have time to recover before she goes in and does the spawn. So yeah, guys, deep to shallow is the ticket. Starting outside of known spawning areas, if you don't know where the spawning areas are, you're looking for hard bottom, you're looking for east-facing banks in a lot of cases, and you're looking for some type of cover. A lot of times naked banks, especially when there's ospreys and eagles and things like that, are not going to be your best spawning banks. The ones that have a little bit of overhanging cover, the ones that have shade once the sun gets up a little bit, are the ones that have a lot of logs and stumps, is going to give those bass that comfort. that they can hang out shallow long enough to pull off the spawn without getting snatched off the bed by an eagle or an osprey or something like that. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're determining a spawning area. Something else something else that'll help you is just some lakes just have known spawning areas. If you go to a lot of your fishing maps, they will have, especially Navionics, they will have the fishing areas in there that are the spawning areas, and then you can just back it off from there. An app that I recently started using, Farwide, has all the fish attractors that are labeled by state agencies, by conservation agencies, and literally most fish attractors are placed within the proximity of a spawning area because they're the place that those fish will stage, then go spawn, and then come back to and recover. So if you see fish attractors on a map, that is usually a pretty good indication that fish are going to spawn somewhere relatively close to that. So basically find that spawning area and then work your way back to the main river channel, work your way back to a secondary point, focus on that, and then follow those fish shallow for the spawn. You'll find more big fish in the spring, especially early spring, and who knows, you might snag that personal best. Guys, I'm Chad Hoover. Hope you liked this video. Do me a favor, smash that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, and leave me a comment so I know what you think.